Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, I want to share with you some photos that our family member Alice sent me last night. As you see here, perhaps a baby shark. And these are all taking place on Melbourne Beach. And so, Melbourne Beach is right here. And basically, as you guys may or may not know, until about a little over a month ago, I was basically living over through here. I had moved to Sarasota and then was living down in just above Venice. And really, what eventually got me definitively out of Florida was the red tide. Because if I couldn't enjoy the beaches anymore, why would I want to stay there in a sense? I mean, there's other things to Florida that are nice. But several close friends and myself did feel the ill effects of the red tide, and it was very disconcerting. I actually had to leave my place, which was about 300-400 yards away from the water, and go stay above Tampa at a friend's house for a while inland to escape it. And literally, I could feel the heaviness in my lungs for at least 6 to 8 weeks, honestly, just not feeling quite right. Well, the red tide is still there. It's all the way up in the Panhandle, and it's down in the Keys, and it's crept all the way up the Atlantic coast now. So this situation's not getting better. In fact, it's getting worse. And when we see these pictures, these are all again from Alice, who is a family member in Melbourne. And this is all just walking on the beach yesterday, down by her house. And we see all the dead fish. And it's such a sad situation. And as this says, there's no end in sight for Florida's algae emergency. The red tide spreads up the Atlantic coast. There is no end in sight, and so you who are not there may not really be hearing anything about this much. And of course, they don't want to, lose the, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of vacationers coming on down, especially this time of year. Next month, there'll be a huge influx of people coming in, and then again in January, there normally would be a huge influx of people coming in, and this brings so much money to Florida. But if you're going, be aware it's everywhere, and if you have any sort of breathing problems at all, I would steer totally clear, because this is not over yet by a long shot. And there are signs that this might be around for the foreseeable future, and it's horrible. It's killing everything around it. And as this says, the red tide that plagued Florida's Gulf Coast for a year and made a rear jump east earlier this month wasn't vanquished by Hurricane Michael. Instead, the toxic algae bloom has continued to move up the state's Atlantic coast, befouling beaches and raising fears of a new ecological crisis should it become widespread in the Indian River Lagoon, one of the most biodiverse estuaries in North America. It's horrible situation. And what if it goes past that as well and keeps spreading? The red tide, a rusty brown ooze caused by the neurotoxin-producing algae Karenia brevis, is a frequent occurrence along Florida's Gulf Coast. It washes ashore from the West Florida continental shelf and is sustained by local and man-made nutrients. But the 2018 bloom's recent Atlantic coast tear has been unusual. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission first detected the algae on the East Coast near Palm Beach County at the end of September after it followed the Gulf of Mexico loop current. Since then, it's migrated northward to what's known as the Treasure Coast, comprising Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River counties, and even the southern part of the Space Coast in Brevard County. And conditions have, unfortunately, been welcoming. Look at the color. Did you see that color? Throughout its journey, the red tide has been killing fish, releasing noxious fumes, and prompting widespread beach closures. We've got warm, nutrient-rich waters on our coast right now, and the conditions are set up very well to allow the algae to bloom. And you know, it's high. It's showing high even off the Treasure Coast now, and so it's killing everything around it. It's creating a huge dead zone. And you know, the biggest concern that these people in the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission have right now is the Indian River Lagoon area, just because of the biodiversity and all. And you know, this is a huge problem, and its scope might not be fully understood, because it's not slowing down at all. And you know, there's word that it's spreading in many other places as well, and just kind of being swept under the table and hidden up. And as this says, it'll take more than a hurricane to shake off Florida's red tide. It's still ongoing, you know. And is this going to be pretty much a permanent fixture that we're going to see? It is very, very obviously deadly. And you know, when I was down there, we had at one point 13 dolphins wash up in just one county in one day, and 250 sea turtles, again, you know, just in the area where I was, in just one day, dead. You know, there's so much. And this is out of the Bradenton Herald, and Bradenton's right above Sarasota. My sister, this is how I actually got introduced to the area, because my sister had a condo here. And when I came and visited her here, I loved it, and that's when I decided I wanted to live down there. And you know, and I moved to Sarasota and loved it. But it's just not healthy. And between the storms, you know, the intensity of the storms that we are seeing is only going to increase. So again, you know, it got to the point where it wasn't really safe. And basically what's happening now is a slow poisoning. Very, very slow poisoning, not just to the fish, but to the residents. And as this says, more bad news for Manatee Beaches. This weekend's red tide forecast doesn't look good. So after local waters saw just a slight reprieve, a new report from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission suggests that concentrations of the toxic algae are on the rise again. So it's going back up into the high concentration area. And here again we see, this is the weekly change. So where you're seeing red is you're seeing areas of higher change, orange, slightly less than the red, and then yellow, slightly less than that. So the sampling over here has been disrupted because of the hurricane, and that's up in the Panhandle, and that's another whole story. So these are areas that are having huge upswings in it right now. And so you see it's both the Atlantic and the Gulf side. And it doesn't mean that there's none down here, because it's there. This is just where it's increasing more. And Anna Maria Island, you know, it's just all the memories and pleasant memories of Florida, and you know, seeing it all being decimated. So this is out of NCBI. And this is what can actually happen. Obviously, you know, people, they always tell people that have asthma, you know, watch out for it, because it could be very, very harmful. And it's more than that. So this was, you know, just looking at what happens after just 1 hour beach exposure. You know, subjects in an asthmatic study were followed up over a 5-day time period. Their symptoms persisted for 3 to 4 days after just a 1 hour beach exposure. 1 hour. How about people that live down there and live very close to the water? And I could feel it, and I was several blocks away. But I could feel it every day, even seeping into the house. So what about the people that are going to be exposed to this, week after week, month after month, and perhaps even over a year or more? There's no signs of this stopping or slowing down, really. And so, what about the people that are, going to suffer from this long-term exposure? Well, over here it says, taken together, data suggests that at least in asthmatics and possibly in others with underlying respiratory illnesses, exposure to aerosolized Florida red tide toxins leads to acute, subacute, and possibly more chronic illnesses. Now, there's more than that too. And, as this is talking about here, this is out of NBC News, the algae produced a toxin that can not only choke animals, but in humans cause headaches, sore throats, vomiting, diarrhea, and pneumonia. Long-term exposure to some algae blooms has been linked to liver cancer and neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's. But funding for large-scale fixes is scarce, and so much pollution has accumulated. And here they're talking about the lake that fed the green algae bloom, and it did basically go and combine out into the ocean. As it says here, it's going to take decades for it to disperse, even if new pollution from sugar farms, dairies, and other sources could be shut down. So, here, and this is partially why Florida might end up turning Democrat, because it's going to be out of, anger towards Governor Scott for not doing enough fast enough, which honestly, all the response was way too slow and way too ineffective, inefficient, as we see all the dead fish and, slowly poisoning all the residents along the coast of Florida. And still, too, how about the long-term effects of that, even going in miles inland? Because, it could, especially if you're talking, it's in the rivers as well. The blue-green algae is in the rivers, and, the red tide is along the coast. But when you're thinking about, this type of situation for months and perhaps years on end, it's going to build up toxins in your system. And if we know how allergies work, it's all about an overload. It's, as my allergist had told me before, it's like taking a pot and just keep adding things to the pot. So, you might not have it overflow at first, but as you keep adding to the pot, eventually it overflows. And your body cannot handle the toxins anymore, and that's when you're going to have a big problem. So this is huge. This is really, really huge. This is affecting the third largest state in the country, and it's a devastating, horrible situation to which there is no end in sight. And so, the 20 million so Floridians are being exposed and slow poisoned on a daily basis. So, and also, we've seen what Hurricane Michael did. So, and we had Irma before that. So, we must each make our own decisions in life. And as I said, it was definitely my favorite state in the U.S., and I love the tropical weather and the beaches and all, but just did not feel it was safe to be there anymore. So one of the things we need to do all the time is to detox, and our livers get so toxic from everything that they're always processing, from the food, the water, the chemicals, everything that we're always being bombarded with. And if you're down in Florida too, the red and the blue-green algae blooms, they just add to it. So we need to be constantly detoxing. And there's a lot of natural things we could just simply incorporate into our diet, and that will really, really help us. Lemon water, great way to detox your liver. Every single morning, since it's believed that the liver produces more enzymes in response to water with lemon than any other food. Garlic is a blood purifier, also can activate enzymes in the liver, And it contains allicin and selenium, which are both good for your liver protection. Avocados, healthy fats. A study found avocados contain compounds that protect the liver, and it's also a very, very healthy fat for your body. Cilantro, love cilantro. It's my favorite herb, and it is great for removing heavy metals from the body. Beets are also a very potent purifier, high in antioxidants, number of substances that will really help to flush out the toxins. And turmeric is a cancer protector, and I love Indian food. It's my favorite food. Very, very powerful spice, and if you don't like the taste of it, then take it perhaps in capsule form. If you do, then wonderful. This is something that should be taken every single day. And the other thing is milk thistle. Milk thistle is very important for the liver as well, liver support. So everybody should be doing these type of things on a regular basis, and think about your food and your herbs as your medicine, and use them as such, things that are healthy for you and going to help you detox and purify. And it should be these type of things should be included anywhere that you are, but especially if you're going to be under constantly being exposed to these toxins that are in the air down there. And just because you're 5 or 10 miles inland, it doesn't mean that they're not making their way to you over a long period of time. So, be very aware of that, my friends. There is no end in sight for Florida's algae emergency. And so, my best wishes, to everybody down there. Lots of love to, there's so much evolutionary energy arts family down in Florida. And friends and all, and always we're wishing them the best. May they always be protected, and everybody has to make their own decision, and it's not easy to transplant your life. And I'm not saying everybody needs to transplant your life, but one of the other things is are we going to end up like we've seen so often in some of the most polluted cities of the world, like China, some of the Chinese cities, or over in Japan, where they're wearing masks every time they're going outside. And perhaps, you're running filters of your own, air purifiers in the house, round the clock as well. It's something that everybody needs to be aware of, being exposed to these toxins long term. As it's saying, studies show that it could lead to Alzheimer's and dementia, as well as so many other issues. Take it very, very, very seriously, my friends. So be safe out there, especially all you down there in Florida, my dear friends and neighbors down in Florida. Well, guys, as always, please do thumbs up to support the channel, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Click the bell for all the notifications, and share with as many people as possible. Wake them up to what's going on and what they're potentially being exposed to, and what they could do to potentially mitigate some of the negative outcomes that may occur due to exposure to these toxins. May you guys always be blessed with abundant peace, love, health, and well-being. God bless, my friends, and namaste.